Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north. Now, if you're coming to me for the first time, I have a tropical greenhouse in the north of England, and outside today it's very much deciding to turn into autumn and bring winter very early. It's throwing it down, it's cold, it's really dull and dismal, and the light that you can see on me is from my grow light. So what I want to do today is take another look at how I can prevent spending loads and loads of cash over the winter on trying to keep the temperatures that my plants have become accustomed to over the summer and last winter. And what I want to do is just pretty much list off all the different things I'm going to do in order to keep the temperatures in here at a pretty constant 12 degrees in the cooler side, 12 degrees Celsius that is, and 18 degrees Celsius in the warmer side. So hopefully I can save some cash and you can too. So let's jump in. And we are in. So as you can see, I've opened up the doors there. So my heater in the corner there is on double time at the moment, trying to heat the whole thing to 18 degrees. Now I don't normally do that, but I thought it would be easier just to point out the different things that I'm going to do. So where should we start? Right, well, first of all, when you are trying to keep a greenhouse to whatever temperature it is, whether it be a tropical greenhouse or whether you're just trying to keep the frost away from your beloved plants, the thing that you want to think about is, how can I keep the heat in? It's easy enough to heat it up and get the heater going once you've got one of these things. I mean, I've got one down there. I have a spur one, just see it under there, that yellow one under there, and over on this side I have the green one. I have to say, the green one and the yellow one were about £45, and they are just as good. The one over here on the left, down here, the Palmer one, was considerably more expensive, about 3 times as much, but it just does the same job, so really you can save yourself some money there. But the thing is, what you're trying to do, it's cheap enough to heat it up. The problem is keeping the heat in. So what you want to do is keep these heaters so that they are only on for the minimum length of time. Okay, so I know that's obvious, but I just thought I'd point that out. So there really isn't a cheap way of doing it. Whatever you do, it's not going to be cheap. Whatever you do, there is nothing in existence that I'm aware of that will keep the heat in and let the light through at the same time. So this is why we use bubble wrap. Now, another way of doing it obviously is to partition off an area. So if you've got some plants that you need to keep warmer, you can do what I've done here and partition an area off so that you're actually heating less of the greenhouse to a higher temperature. So I've left the bubble wrap on, or most of the bubble wrap on, all year, and you can see it's not gone green at all. There's not a great deal of algae. There might be a little tiny bit in 1 or 2 places, but this is one of the reasons that I use this particular type of bubble wrap. But we'll come to that in a second. So all you're left with really is bubble wrap. There are other materials that you can make a greenhouse out of that will keep the heat in more, like for example polycarbonate, but of course you get other issues with that. You get a lot of green algae with polycarbonate, and of course it doesn't let the light in as through quite as much. But if you've got grow lights, then that might not be an issue for you. So I'm assuming you've got whatever greenhouse you've got, you can't go and swap it and change it. I'm assuming you've got glass greenhouse and you're trying to bubble wrap it in some way. So the first thing to think about is the kind of bubble wrap that you're using. Now, I use a horticultural grade bubble wrap. Don't be tempted to use packaging bubble wrap. It's a completely different material, and it's been designed to do a different job. Horticultural bubble wrap is more expensive. It lets more light through. The bubbles are larger, and it has chemicals in it to make it more UV resistant, so it doesn't degrade as quickly. So for all those reasons, you're much better going for horticultural grade bubble wrap, which is freely available on the internet. Just have a look on, I get mine from eBay, but I'm sure you can get it from other places. But make sure you're looking for horticultural grade bubble wrap. Now there is one caveat with that. Now I've got bubble wrap in the past from from actually greenhouse specialists from a place in the UK that actually sells greenhouses and all the paraphernalia that goes with it. And even though they said, I think they call them heat sheets, in fact you can actually see there's a little bit of it underneath here, see the smaller bubbles underneath, but that was frankly absolute rubbish. It just didn't do the job properly. It's difficult to explain without you actually having a go of it and putting it up yourself. You would notice the difference. This stuff with the larger bubbles is way easier to put up, and it stays up better and it doesn't crease the same. It's definitely worth investing in, I would say, especially if you're like me and you want to keep it up all year round. So why do I keep it up all year round? Well, think of it in terms of double glazing on a house. When it comes round to winter and you close all the doors and the windows, and that double glazing prevents that heat exchange, and that's what bubble wrap does. It prevents the heat exchange. That doesn't mean that come summertime I can't open my considerable number of vents and louver windows and double doors and cool it down. The shading will do that. The shading will cool it down along with opening all those the windows, vents and doors. It's not going to make it warmer just by having the bubble wrap on through summer. All it will do is prevent the heat exchange, and that's what you're after. So there's no reason why you can't keep it up all year round. It's not an easy job to put bubble wrap up. It's difficult enough when you've got an empty greenhouse, but it's even more so when you've got loads of plants in it. And of course the weather's so bad outside here at the moment, there's no way I can remove all these plants, and I'm certainly not inclined to do so anyway. So if you're like me and you're going to keep it up, you want to make sure you do a good job of it. And I'm sure at some point we're going to have to change it, but I can do that piecemeal. I don't need to do it all at once. So we've said you're going to need horticultural bubble wrap. Now what is it that actually prevents the heat exchange with bubble wrap? Well, there are two things to it, I think. First thing, obviously, is the bubbles. So bigger bubbles are better. They let more light through, and also they are, because it's the actual air. It's the air that's trapped there that's the insulating property. It's not the plastic. If you just had a single layer of plastic with no bubbles in it at all, it would do practically nothing to keep the heat inside the greenhouse. You might as well put a piece of cling film over it. It makes no difference whatsoever. It's the bubbles. However, that's just one piece in the puzzle. What you want to do is trap some air between, I'll see if I can show you here, between the frames of the greenhouse and the window. Obviously it's the window that it's coming through, and if you can trap a layer of air, I think can you see that, how there's a layer of air, and again I've still got those heat sheets underneath on there. I didn't remove it, and I'm going to leave them on. There's no reason to remove it. It just adds another layer in that case. But you want a layer of air between there, because air is one of the best insulating properties, one of the best insulating materials that there is. Air is brilliant. It doesn't let heat through it very easily or very efficiently at all. So you really want to trap that layer of air. So how do you trap it? Well, the thing to do is to make sure that up here I've got some double-sided sticky tape. That means that along there is no gap. So you need to go all the way around wherever you put the bubble wrap and make sure that there are no gaps anywhere at all where that heat can get through. So again, under there I've got a gap all the way along. Where I've put these, this is what people traditionally put on these little fixings here, but then there would be a gap along there where there would be a hole where the air could exchange in and out. So it's a really finicky job. It takes ages. It's not something anybody enjoys doing, but think of it for your pocket, your wallet. If you want to save money, then you really need to go around your greenhouse and make sure that all the vulnerable points are sealed up, because it can take even just a tiniest little gap somewhere, and that can mean that the cool air is coming in and the warmer is flooding out, and of course your heater is going to click back into life and try and overcome that and get it back up to the same temperature again. So it's well worth doing. So we said horticultural grade bubble wrap, that's the first thing. Second thing is make sure that you seal up any gaps. Use some double-sided sticky tape if necessary. You can also put the tape that I put down here is like it's a special weatherproof kind of a tape. You can get that again from Amazon. Just look for weatherproof sticky tape. The only reason I use the weatherproof one is that because obviously you get condensation in here, that weatherproof tape will stick. You need to stick it when it's dry, but then it will stay then even when it gets wet. If you just use ordinary like boxing tape or ordinary sticky tape, it's not going to stick. So that's the other thing to do. So you need to make sure you trap the air between the bubble wrap and the glass. That's going to help you to keep that heat in. So the other thing to think about is vulnerable points. So where are the vulnerable points in a greenhouse? So, well, all the vents, definitely. So I'm going to need to take out all these automatic openers so that these vents don't open. Now mine open at 18 degrees. When it's 18 degrees in the greenhouse, those vents will open. I get a little bit of sun on it and they're going to open. So there's probably still another month or so when they will open, but I'm going to remove those vents now because I don't want it to. The sun is low enough in the sky for it not to cause the temperature in here to rocket too high. And I can always open the double doors as well if that's necessary. So I'm going to remove all the louvre automatic openers, and you can see I've got some bubble wrap already on there, but I'm then going to cover this whole section with another layer of bubble wrap because obviously that is an area of vulnerability anywhere around the windows, and that has to happen through every single vent. And I have 4 double vents like that, 4 double vents. I also have louvre windows, and I have 5 of those. They're more difficult to see, but they're all kind of underneath down at the bottom to draw the cool air in the summer. So again, you can see that's quite a vulnerable point. And where the windows join, I don't know if you can just see there is a tiny little gap. It's big enough for creatures to crawl in. So what I've done there, I've put some, it's like a self-adhesive foam draft excluder, and I've put those right along so that when I close the louvre windows, it closes them properly. So it's not going to be easy getting under there, but that needs a whole layer of bubble wrap over that, maybe even 2. So I've got 5 of those windows to do. They're vulnerable points. More vulnerable points are your double doors, or your doors at the end. You can see I've also put some it's like a brushed draft excluder. I've got that in the middle there as well as the foam. Anywhere you can see any of these vulnerable points, I've put some draft excluder over there on that side. You can see this strip curtain. This is one of these, I'm sure you've all seen them, that they have in these tropical greenhouses, in any kind of refrigerated area or heated area. That's really good, but they are quite expensive. I think that one was about £80, and I couldn't really afford to put that anywhere else. I couldn't afford to have that one between my warm side and my cool side. But it's going to last forever, so that I thought that was a good investment. So that's great. So they're the vulnerable points. Where does a greenhouse lose most of its heat from? Well, of course, it's going to be the roof, isn't it? So if you do add any extra bubble wrap anywhere, make sure that you do it in that kind of cross section there in the roof, that kind of V shape there in the roof. That's the place where you're going to add any more if you're going to do it. Another place to think about is your floor. Now again, it's not something you can change a great deal once it's already down. I had a greenhouse with just like a stone floor, lost a lot of heat through the floor. I've now got these foam tiles. They're not actually porous, but because each of the tiles is just kind of pressed in together, there are loads and loads of gaps. You can't see the gaps, but that's where all the water drains away from. So the foam is great because that also has insulating properties. All around the bottom end of the foam, where the greenhouse, like the side of the greenhouse meets the foam, I've put the silicon sealant all the way along, which stops slugs coming through, but it also stops drafts coming up and cooler coming up. So I think in terms of how you can keep the heat in. That's about all you can do. You've got your bubble wrap up, you've chose the right one, you've sealed up all your windows, remove your auto vent openers, sealed up all your louvre windows, you've doubled up with the bubble wrap on the places that are more vulnerable, you've put draft excluder wherever you can see any tiny little gaps. That really is about all you can do to keep your greenhouse nice and toasty throughout the winter months. Now, if you've got some shading, you might not be able to see it here, but on this gable end there's some shading on the other side. I'm going to remove that. I've got some shading on the outside on this particular side of the roof. This one is a little bit easier for me because they're like roller shades, so I can roll those up whenever I want. And of course, even when I've got the shades down, I've got the grow lights on for 12 hours a day now, and that will make sure that the plants get the light that they need. However, there will come a time, probably in November, midway through November, when I'll roll up those shading blinds as well. You've got to be careful because through glass, even a weaker winter sun can burn plants. So it's something to keep an eye on there. So I think I've covered everything. So I've got a bit of a job on my hands now. So I'll leave you to it to get on with insulating your own greenhouse and making sure you've got a little bolt hole there that's nice and toasty warm to come to in the winter months to keep us all from getting really miserable during these COVID times. So if you have any tips, because I'm not the font of all knowledge on greenhouse heating. By the way, I know people do this thing with candles. I've tried it. Honestly, I really don't think it heats it more than a fraction of a degree, which is not what I want. That might be enough for you, depending where you live, to keep the frost off. But certainly if you're trying to keep your greenhouse to 12 degrees, that's just a complete waste of time. I've seen people with barrels of hot water. Well, if you've got space for that, again, I expect you're going to need a lot of barrels and a lot of water in order to make a discernible difference. For me, makes no difference, plus I don't have the space anyway. So if you have any other tips, I'm all ears. I'd love to save myself a bit more cash if possible. But for now, I will see you on the next one. Bye.